This is section 3.2, and in this section, we're going to dive into truth tables. And we're just going to dive right into truth tables. All right, so truth tables are going to take these statements for us and pull them together with those connectives. We're going to look at these compound statements and analyze their truth values when one statement's true, one is false, they're both true, they're both false, things like that. So let's just dive right into it, okay? Let's draw a truth table for P and Q. Remember, this is the symbol for conjunction or and. You can kind of remember that because it almost looks like a capital A. All right? Just to make this truth table a little easier to draw this first time, let's just go ahead and put some statements to P and Q. Let's say the statement P is I will do homework and Q is I will cook dinner. Okay? When you're doing a truth table, Alex will set you up with P and Q already listed. Okay? It's always going to be in this order. It's going to give you all of the possible truth values for P and Q. So P can be true or false. Q can be true or false. Together, they can be both true. This one true, that one false. This one false, that one true, or both false. So these are the 4 different arrangements of true and false for the 2 statements P and Q. Now let's see how these individual truth values affect this conjunction statement, this connective, this compound statement. Okay, so P and Q is I will do homework and I will cook dinner. Okay, so let's say that, I ask my son, hey, I want you to do your homework and I want you to cook dinner. This first line right here is true, true. This true under P means he did his homework. This true under Q means he cooked dinner. Did he do what I asked him to do? Now remember, I asked him for the and. I asked him to do his homework and cook dinner. True means he did his homework. True means he cooked dinner. Did he do what I asked? Yes. All right, this next line is a true false. True under P means he did his homework, but a false here means he did not cook dinner. So did he do what I asked? Well, no, I asked him to do both, right? I asked him to do his homework and cook dinner. So this means he didn't do what I asked. And means you have to do both. So he did not do what I asked. So that means this and statement is false because he did not do both things like I asked. All right, let's go down to the next line. False, true. This false in the P column means he didn't do his homework, but he did cook dinner. Did he do what I asked? Well, no. Remember, the and means both. He didn't do both like I asked. And then last up, false, false. This means he didn't do his homework, nor did he cook dinner. So did he do what I asked? You really know. So that would be the truth table for this conjunction, for this compound statement. Okay, let's look at this, but let's do this for the disjunction or the or statement. Now remember, or is what's called an inclusive or. It's a one or the other or both statement. So once again, we have this same standard layout that we're going to start with. So this time, let's say that I ask my son, hey, do your homework or cook dinner. All right, let's look at this first outcome. True. In this P column, true means he did his homework. True in the Q column means he cooked dinner. Did he do what I asked? If I asked him to do his homework or cook dinner, yeah, he did it. He just happened to do both. So yeah. Remember, the or statement is a one or the other or both. This is the or both. All right, let's go down one. True here means he did his homework, but he didn't cook dinner. Did he do what I asked? Yeah, I just asked him to do one or the other or both. So yeah, he's good. Come down here to the next line. Did not do his homework, that's the false, but he did cook dinner. Okay, that's good. I asked him to do one or the other or both, so yeah, he did one or the other. Down here, false, false. All right, now he didn't do his homework, nor did he cook dinner. So now we're false because I asked him to do one or the other or both. All right, so that's it for like these kind of basic truth tables for these and these ors. Let's get a little more complicated. All right, now we're going to have 2 additional columns in here. We've got my P and Q, but then I've got a not P and Q. So remember, this is your conjunction. That's your and that's a not. Just like with algebra, I'm going to do what's in the parentheses first. That's why this one gets its own column. Then I'll do what's outside the parentheses, so it gets its own column. The way that I'm always going to set up these truth tables is that I'm only doing one operation at a time. Do not try to do both the and the not simultaneously. It could get really, really messy and complicated. So the and, you could go back through this with the whole homework, cook dinner, and go back through this. Or we can just go back to right over here when we already did it. Because this layout is going to be the same every single time. So we can just copy this P and Q of true, false, false, false. Okay, so true, false, false, false. And let's just make a note that I just copied this from example 1, so you don't think that it was just some kind of miracle that came to me in a vision. Okay, now for that last column, the only thing that I'm going to do is this negation. Okay, I've already done the and. It's right there. This not is the negation of P and Q. So I am going to negate this stuff. So I'm going to negate right here. So I'm highlighting the operation that I'm doing, and I'm highlighting the column that I'm doing it to. So here's what I'm about to do. Here's where I'm doing it. That way you know where to look. I don't need these anymore. I use those to get this. Sort of. I mean, I copied it from example 1 where I did use those, but okay, I just need to negate these. That's a super easy thing to do. We love the negations on truth tables. They're the easiest part. Look, the opposite of true is false. The opposite of false is true. The opposite of false is true. The opposite of false is true. We love negations. They are super easy. You just need to know where to look and what to do. Okay, next up, we're going to draw a truth table for the conditional statement P implies Q. Okay, remember that conditional statement is that if-then kind of statement. To make it a little bit easier, I'm going to put some statements to it just to kind of help you talk through it so that all of these symbols and letters and stuff can make a little bit more sense, because this can look like a hot mess. You know, somebody walking by you doing your homework is going to look at this and ask you what is going on, because it just looks like a mess here. Okay, so let's say that statement P, the order of this is important, okay? Statement P is there is a fire, and statement Q is you call 911. If then would be if there is a fire, then you call 911. Okay, so that's your statement. Now what we're going to do is analyze the truth of, or the outcome of this statement based on these 4 different truth values. So let's analyze if this conditional statement is true or false based on the outcomes of P and Q. Okay, so remember the statement, if there is a fire, then you call 911. Let's just write that down. Okay. All right, first line is a true. Okay, this means it was true that there was a fire and true that you called 911. Now, what I want you to look at this if-then statement is, I want you to look at it like a promise, okay? You promise that if there's a fire, that you will call 911. All right, this says there was a fire and you called 911. So this one becomes, did you keep your promise? Well, yes, you did. There was a fire. You followed through with what you said you were going to do. All right, this next line. True means there was a fire, but false means you did not call 911. Did you keep your promise? No, because there was a fire, but you didn't call for help. So you broke your promise. So you got to think of this like a promise, that if this thing happens, then you're going to follow through and do this second thing. Okay, so let me say that again. This is like a promise that if this happens, then you have to act and do this thing. So if a fire happens, then you promise that you're going to act and you're going to call 911. All right, that's important because let's look at this one. False, true. False says there was not a fire. True means you called 911. Did you break your promise? No, your promise only holds that if there is a fire, then you call. This just says, hey, there wasn't a fire to begin with. You just happened to call 911. Maybe there was a different emergency. Maybe you had another reason for calling 911. Who knows? Maybe you just wanted to know what time it is. True story. My husband used to be a 911 operator, and people would call and ask him for the time and the weather. And he's like, do you have an emergency? So yeah, you can call 911 for other reasons. So this false right here is what means that you don't have to follow through. There wasn't a fire to begin with. So this one is a default true. You didn't break your promise because this first thing didn't happen for you to need to follow through. Okay? All right, then we have false. There's no fire. You did not call 911. Did you break your promise? No, that statement is still true. You did not break your promise. So no fire. You didn't call 911. That's just a normal day. Your promise is that if this first thing happens, if this first thing is true, then you have to follow through. Okay, so here's the big takeaway. You'll notice that in here, this is the only one that's false. That's because this line is what's important. The conditional statement is false only when this first thing happens and you don't follow through. This thing is true, but then you don't do what you said you were going to do. That's the only time that this conditional statement is false. These two are just true by default because this is false. It means there was no fire to begin with, so it didn't really matter what you did. You didn't have to follow through on a promise. Okay. Next up is the biconditional one, and this is going to be your least favorite because the biconditional is a conjunction of the two conditionals. So it is a two-directional conditional statement. It is the if and only if statement. This biconditional is the abbreviation for the conditional from P to Q and the conditional from Q back to P. As we learned last time, these conditional statements are very directional. It really matters. If this happens, then you follow through. If this happens, then you follow through. So the direction is very important. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go ahead and build this. This one's going to have 3 columns to it. We're not going to redo this one. This P to Q we just did. Right here, P to Q. It was true, false, true, true. So let's just copy this down. So true, false, true, true. So that came from example 4. But now we're going to go backwards from Q to P. This is going to be a little bit confusing because now we're going to have to go from here to here. We're going to have to look at these true falses, but we're going to have to look at them backwards. Okay? So going from Q to P, we're going from true to true. So don't look left to right. This tells me I need to go right to left, Q to P. So true to true. So let's look at that directional. True that this first thing happened, and then true you followed through. Good. All right, this one. Remember, right to left, Q to P. False means this first thing did not happen. Okay, whatever that first thing happens to be. If it's the, fire and calling 911. So there was no fire. So it doesn't matter what you do here. If there's nothing happening with this first thing, it doesn't matter what the result is. You don't have to follow through on your promise. So that one's true. This one is true to false. Remember that one from the last example? That's when we get the false. True that there was a fire, and then false that you did not call 911. That's you breaking your promise. But remember, I'm going from Q to P, Q to P. False to false. No fire, you didn't have to call. Normal day. That one's okay. Now, last up, this looks like a big mess, right? This looks very menacing, but it's not bad, all right? Yes, it's ugly, but it's got a great personality, smart, funny, all that. This is just a conjunction. This is just an and for 2 columns. Okay, the P to Q column right here and the Q to P column right here. So here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I'm doing it to. So I'm going to do the and to these 2 things. Okay, so let's go back to my and statement. My and statement, back here on the first page, my and statement, remember, that was that you had to do both in order for it to be true. In order for an and to be true, I have to do both. Otherwise, it's false. So see, if there's 1 or more falses in here, then the and isn't true. So here's my and. Okay, remember, my and means that I have to do both things in order for my and to be true. Okay, so and I'm looking right here and here because that's what was given. So true and true means you did this, you did this. So yes, you did the and. Beautiful. False true. Oh, you did one, but you didn't do the other. That's not enough for an and. An and requires you to do both. Okay, here. Ooh, you didn't do that one, but you did this one. Now, I did this right to left. Left to right, right to left doesn't matter with the and the ors. It's only directional with these arrows. So, the and says I have to do both. I didn't do both. I did this one, but not this one. So that's not enough for an and. And then here, ooh, I did both. True, true. Cool. Okay, so this last column right here is my biconditional column. So what I want to show you is this summary of connectives sheet that you might have seen linked in D2L. And what I did was write up all 4 of your connectives. Let me just show you that. So this is what is in D2L. So I wrote up all 4 of the connectives and what their truth tables look like, and kind of explained some shortcuts. That way you can use this as a quick reference sheet when you're building these bigger truth tables. So we have the conjunction, that's the and. You'll notice in this column that it's only true when both are true. When I say both, I mean both truth values. So here, true, true, boom, true. The disjunction is the or. You'll notice it's all true except for one false. It's only false when both are false. When I say both, I mean the P and the Q. So when both P and Q are false. So both of those are false is the only time that or is false. The conditional is a promise that is only false when you go from true to false. So you'll see right here is the false, and it goes true to false. The biconditional, so when we just finished, you'll notice that it's true, false, false, true. It is only true when both truth values are the same. So true when these two are the same, true, true. True when both of these are the same. Okay? If you get one of each, then the biconditional is false. So I'm trying to give you some little shortcuts to use to help. So what it's going to be is that sometimes your truth table is going to just have these, show up in there, and you can just copy them down. Boom. Sometimes you may have to do a conjunction with scarier things, and that's when you're going to use this kind of explanation. So there'll be some times that you'll notice I'll use the explanation. Sometimes I'll just straight copy the column. I'll just straight up copy the column if it's just a plain old P and Q, or P or Q, or P to Q. If it's that, I'll just straight up copy that column. If it's something more convoluted where I have to do a disjunction of 2 different things that's not just P and Q, then I'm going to go for my explanation. Okay, so then I wrote a little bit extra down here. The conjunction, since it's an and, you have to do both in order for it to be true. A disjunction, since it's an or, you can do one or the other or both. So I just tried to put like a summary on here for you to use as a quick reference guide, so you didn't have to go digging around in your notes. Okay, so back at the home front here with example 6, we're going to do some more truth tables, and we're just going to start making them worse. All right, we got our starting point of P and Q. This one is just not P. That is just the negation of that column right there. We love negations. Negations are super duper easy. Okay, it's just the opposite truth value. So like the opposite of true, true, false, false. The opposite is false, false, true, true. Look, the opposite. True, false. There's the opposite. True, false, opposite. False to true, false to true. So it's just the opposite. This is telling you what I'm doing, and this is drawing your attention to where I'm doing it. If this were not Q, then I would have done the negation of that column. Okay, this next column, don't look at this negation. You've already done that. I'm just going to do one operation at a time. This one is your disjunction. That's your or statement. All right. That or statement is an or for what 2 columns. So what 2 columns am I going to join together with or? Well, the not P column right there, and Q. So there's the operation, and this draws your attention to what columns I'm doing it to. And here comes the summary of connections. So you're going to use this disjunction. Having trouble focusing here. Okay, because it's not just P or Q, don't just slap down true, 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 false. I am connecting these 2 things. So let's go down here. It's an or statement. It's only false when both are false. This is only false when both of these are false. Okay. Are both of these false? No. So it's okay. Are both of those false? Yes. It's only false when both of the things you're connecting are false. That one's okay. That one's okay. It's only false when both are false. So that's that statement right there. And you're done. That's the truth table. It's a lot of thinking for sure. It doesn't look like a lot of work, but that's because a lot of the work is happening in your brain. Okay, so in ALEKS, it will just say draw a truth table for this. All right. And ALEKS is probably not going to give you the intermediate steps. You're just going to have to know to put those in there. It will likely just give you those two to start with and this one. Okay. Sometimes in some of the earlier homework questions, it might give you these columns, but it will likely not. Okay. So just know it will always give you P and Q, but it will likely not give you those columns. You just have to know to put those in there. Now, you can do that on your separate paper that you're doing this on, because I'm hoping that you're writing this stuff down on paper and that you're not just trying to just kick this out of your brain without showing any work, because that's a lot to have to keep up with in your brain. You can also, if you look in ALEKS, it's going to give you a table, and up above that table, it's going to have a little plus sign. You can click on that and you can add a column in there yourself. That is helpful for your own benefit to put these columns in there. It's also helpful for me because I can see what you added in there and see where you may have gone wrong. Okay, and that's going to be really beneficial on the tests and the quizzes because that's where you can get partial credit. And if you just slap down some answers in here and I have no work to look at, I don't know where you may have gone wrong. Okay, so with this one, I've got two negations and a conjunction. I'm going to have to do these one at a time. So that's why I've got a negation of P column, I've got a negation of Q column, then I've got the and. One operation at a time. So I've got this negation of the P column. All right. The opposite of true, true, false, false is false, false, true, true. Easy peasy. The negation of Q, that's just the opposite of Q. Instead of true, false, the opposite is false, true, false, true. This one, I already did the negations. So remember, I'm only going to do one operation per column. Now I'm going to do this conjunction. That is an and. And my and my ors, all my connectives, require two columns. Okay, so what two columns am I going to and together? Well, the not P column and the not Q column. So this is what I'm going to do. And here's where I'm going to do it too. All right, the and. Let's bring in that summary sheet. The and statement, remember, and is a both. It is only true when both are true. It is only true when you do both things that I ask you to do. Remember back in that example. It's only true when both things are true. Okay, so here's my and. Are both of these true? No. Are both of these true? No. Are both of these true? No. Are both of these true? Yes. It is only true when both are true. Only true when both of these are true. So I'm trying to simplify this by using this sheet. I really just kind of abandon at this point using a statement for P and a statement for Q, because if I start trying to use real world statements and I start trying to and a bunch of knots together, it's going to get really confusing. So I'm just trying to simplify this as best I can with the connective, where to look, and how to properly execute the connective. Okay, example 8. All right, this is a big one. So we have Q, the conditional, and then we've got this stuff. All right, so I can't do that conditional first, so don't just go left to right. I have to work in the parentheses first. But even within the parentheses, I can't do this and this not at the same time. So I made a column for the not. Then I did the column for the and, connecting those two. Then I can do my conditional, my Q toward that stuff. All right, so first up is my negation of that column. We love the negations. Those are super easy. All right, the opposite of true, true, false, false is false, false, true, true. Next up is an and. All right, so that's an and, a conjunction. And that's going to be for my not P and Q. So that's the operation, and those are the columns that I'm going to do it to. All right, so come back to my summary sheet. The conjunction, the and, is only true when both are true. This is only true when both are true. Are both true? No. Are both true? No. Are both true? Yes, it's only true when both are true. Are both true? No. All right, lastly, this looks like a whole hot mess, but it's really just one operation, and it's going from this, which I may have just made it really difficult to see my truth values. So I'm going there from Q toward that. So I'm going from Q to that. Now, because this is directional, you'll often see me write an arrow. That way I make sure that we are looking in the right direction, because those directionals are very important with these conditional statements. Okay, this conditional is only false when you go from true toward false. When there's a fire, but you did not call 911. When you broke your promise. All right, so we're going from true to false, that direction. Oh, that's you breaking your promise. There was a fire, you didn't call 911. So that's you breaking your promise. False to false is okay. No fire, you didn't call 911, that's okay. You didn't break your promise. It's just a normal day. True to true. True to true means there was a fire. You did what you said. You called 911. So you kept your promise. And then false to false, just like line 2, that one's still okay. No fire. You didn't call 911. That's okay. It's a normal day. You didn't break your promise. So these can look really menacing, but my goal is to have you be able to look at these and see the individual parts and just be able to kind of chip away at this one operation at a time. You know, I want you to look at these like a really big, thick book to read and just say, okay, I just got to read it one page at a time, because that's all you're going to do. You're just going to do one operation at a time. All right, the last example. Now, how can this possibly get any worse? Well, that's to bring in a third statement. Everything we've done so far with truth tables has been based on two statements, P and Q. There are some where we're going to have to bring in a third statement of R. Bringing in a third statement, look at your setup now. Before we had two statements, each one having two outcomes, true or false. That gave us a total of 4 outcomes, 2 times 2. When we have 3 statements, now we have 2 outcomes for P, 2 outcomes for Q, and 2 outcomes for R. That 2 times 2 times 2 is 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. That's my 8 rows. These are all the possible outcomes for 3 different statements and their truth outcomes. You'll notice there's a pattern in here. The P has 4 trues, 4 falses. The Q's are 2 at a time of true, true, false, false. And the R's are 1 at a time. True, false, true, false. So there's a pattern in there. Luckily, Alex is going to give you that. You do not have to write that. The rest of the stuff, we're going to be able to go back to our summary of connectives. This is just going to be chipping away at it. Okay, it's just a grind. That's it. You're just going to have to just chip away at it. Here's my statement. Okay, remember, you're only going to do one thing at a time. I cannot do this negation until I do what's in the parentheses. So remember, order of operation. So let's do the parentheses first. So that's why this column is here. Then I can negate what's in the parentheses. So there's that column. Then I can do the conjunction. I can and this mess with R together. So I've got one operation happening in each column. All right. First up is Q conditional to P. Okay, so I've got my Q and I got P. This is a conditional statement. The direction is specific, so let's put a little arrow there. That's kind of hard to see, isn't it? But that arrow going in that direction. Let's see, maybe we'll put it up here. Boop. Okay, Q to P. Remember, my conditional statement is a promise. Now, look, Q to P. Don't just copy down this column. Don't just slap that down. That's a P to Q. This is Q to P. So let's use the kind of little statement down here, little hint. Only false when this happens, and then you don't follow through. It's only false when you go true to false. Keep that in mind. All right, remember I'm going right to left, Q to P. True to true. That one's okay. True to true. That one's good. There's a fire. You called 911. Cool. False to true. Remember the direction. Start here, go to here. No fire. You did not, but you called 911. That's okay. Maybe you had another compelling reason to call 911. Okay? That one's okay. False to true. Same as the previous line. Okay. Boop. True to false. Remember, we're starting here, going to here. True, there was a fire. False. You did not call 911. You did not keep your promise. True to false. Same thing. You did not keep your promise. False to false. That's okay. You might say, oh, there's a whole bunch of falses here. How is that a true? Remember, because this is no fire. You didn't call 911. That's just a normal day. You didn't break a promise. There was nothing for you to do. And that's the same thing, false to false. Okay, next up, the next column is I've already done the conditional. That's just going to be the negation of the stuff in the parentheses. Well, the stuff in the parentheses is this column I just did. We really like the negation. This is going to be easy. All I have to do is write the opposite truth value of what's in this column. All right, so true, opposite is false. True, opposite's false. True, opposite false. True, false. False, the opposite's true. False, the opposite's true. True, the opposite's false. True, the opposite's false. All right, almost done. That last column, which is our final answer for this truth table, is this conjunction. That's the and. And remember the conjunctions and disjunctions, those are connectives. Those connectives require two columns to connect. So I'm going to connect the not Q to P, that's this column right here, and I'm going to connect R. So my highlighter is to make sure, because once you get a whole bunch of columns, sometimes it's hard to know where to look. So this is just my way of helping you to see what you're doing and where you're doing it to. All right, this is just an and. Now I realize there's a lot of work in here, but like I said, you're just going to chip away at it. The conjunction, the and. Only true when both are true. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Only true when both are true. Here we go. Only true when both are true. Are both true? No. Are both true? No. Are both true? No. Are both true? No. Are both true? Yes. Remember, it was only true when both of these are true. Are both of them true? No. Are both of them true? No. Are both of them true? No. The and. Only true when both are true. So it looks like a lot. There's a lot of thinking involved in these. There's a lot of skill in how to dissect this thing into these smaller pieces, of this table, and being able to properly use this. So I want you to make sure that you're doing the homework on this stuff. It is really important that you don't just watch me do this stuff and say, oh yeah, that makes sense. You have to try it on your own. Okay, I really cannot stress that enough. You have to try these on your own. Math cannot be learned through the eyes. You have to learn it through your hands. You cannot just watch somebody. It's very similar to like Olympic athletes. You can't just watch the Olympics and expect to go be an Olympian, right? You have to actually go practice yourself. So that's what the homework is. That is your practice time. So it's important that you practice this stuff. Okay, well, this finishes up section 3.2.